Yes. Push the little
And I
lever.
don't slide off of it.
Yeah.
Man, I
Well,
okay.
push the lever.
Okay, for everyone in the audience, this is the February 18th, 2004 meeting of the Lake Forest Committee of the Whole. We'll begin by taking roll.
Chairman Novit.
Here.
Mayor Schoenheider.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck is absent. Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Here.
Alderman Tack is absent. Alderman Reisenberg is absent. Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Edelman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. On our short agenda, the first item is the approval of the minutes for the February 3rd, 2014 meeting. Are there any corrections, or do we have a motion for approval?
I move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries. Third item on the agenda, and we have to move slower because we have to fill an hour, is the report on the Electrical Aggregation Consortium Year 3 pricing. And Karina, start.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yes, this evening I will be briefing the committee regarding potential cost of what we believe that the electric supply rate will be for the third year with MC squared. Traditionally, since we've been working with MC squared, our electric supply price, including the 100% renewable energy certificate, has also been much lower in comparison to the ComEd default rate. It's actually anticipated by MC squared that there will be a significant increase in the supply rate for the third year contract. In actually trying to analyze what the increase or cost is, if you will, we actually had to do a quick little breakdown. And the increase of cost is really going to be shown through with the capacity charge, which is highlighted in red. The capacity charge is actually from our wholesaler, market operator PJM. And this is a non-negotiable, and all PJM participants, including ComEd, actually have to pay this. The increased capacity charges reflect an anticipated tightening of electricity generation capacity actually in the region. And it's anticipated that the capacity charge will start to reduce by 2016. What's also important to highlight for you is that our REC, or our green electricity cost, is really insignificant, or only 2%, if you will, of that total cost. So what our current pricing is per kilowatt is 5.09 cents, and what MC squared is so far quoting a potential of 6.46 cents per kilowatt. Since all PJM markets will see an increased capacity charge starting in June, this also means that ComEd will have an increased capacity charge. Right now, we're anticipating that the ComEd default rate will be approximately between, between 6.8 and 7.2 cents per kilowatt. So what does this mean for Lake Forest residents? At the end of the day, we know that the electric supply cost will be increased slightly. That being said, Lake Forest residents have saved over $4.4 million, and we still can expect to see a supply cost lower than the ComEd default rate. So we're looking at about 6.4, and the ComEd rate will be anywhere between 6.8 and 7.2. So what's happening is the consortium is really meeting on a weekly basis, or not meeting, but receiving email correspondence from MC squared on a weekly basis to identify a potential lock-in rate. So we're looking that the lock-in rate would be anywhere between 6 cents per kilowatt to maybe 6.4, 6.5 cents per kilowatt. We hope that the consortium will solidify this within the next 30 days. Therefore, we can send out the appropriate notification to the homeowners so that they can be advised of what their new electric supply cost will be. So at the end of the day, we know that it will be lower than ComEd. And I think the other thing that staff would probably like to ensure is that the committee is still on board with the green electric supply rate that we're receiving. And I think you can tell from one of my prior charts that it's really a minor cost, or about 1 cent per kilowatt. What questions would you have for me?
Who's PJM?
Yeah.
There are, actually, they are, I had to look them up because I will say that who prepared this was Kurt Volkman, and he was actually supposed to be coming and providing this presentation this evening, but had a Park and Rec Board meeting. But PJ&M actually coordinates the buying, selling, and delivery of wholesale electricity through the energy market. So they essentially have the control over this.
But who are they? They like quintupled their component of the charge. According to your bar graph, it's like 5 times as much orange as last year.
Do they have a monopoly?
Well, what also, we have had discussions, and Bob, you might also want to articulate on that, but we've had discussions knowing that the next couple of years, if you will, that the capacity charge would increase. And this is a charge that everyone has to pay, and it's been forecasted that it could potentially happen.
Why?
Bob, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
But being warned doesn't mean that we should accept it.
But if it's a regional, across-the-board price that everyone in the market would have to pay,
So they're a monopoly?
Yeah, we can, what, I think it would be best, because neither Karina or I are an expert in the utilities field. Kurt Volkman will be here, I think, at the March 3rd meeting to talk about something completely different, but we can ask him to come prepared. My understanding is that this is sort of a monopoly in terms of the companies or the suppliers that are out there. And as Karina said, we were aware about a year ago that this capacity charge, and it's not just for Lake Forest or ComEd, it's everybody within, I understand, the Midwest region is still facing this capacity charge. And I don't know if this is imposed by the federal government as a result of some new legislation either. But what we can do is have Kurt be prepared to address that specific question when he's here next time.
Is there any indication of what is driving it? I mean, it sounds like there's a reduction in capacity.
I think it's both the reduction in capacity, but I think it also may have to do with some requirements to upgrade systems and
Probably
make
coal.
investments in the
It's probably
systems and those kinds
anti-coal,
of things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like our ethanol charge that we
Right.
get to pay. It's the government telling us, you know, that certain technologies are not favored, so.
Right.
Competitive? No.
Karina, what's our contractual relationship with MC Squared? Are we like 3 years with them, or what do we have with them?
it is a 3-year contract. And if you recall, 3 years ago, 8 municipalities joined and created the North Shore Electric Aggregation Consortium. And really, due to the deregulation from Governor Quinn's office, that essentially allowed us to identify an alternative electric supply rate other than ComEd. So we went out to bid, and from going out to bid, we identified MC Squared as that provider.
I mean, are they interested in continuing on with that relationship? And if so, I mean, should the consortium start talking to them about a renewal, but in turn, some kind of recasting of the price?
I think that regardless, eventually, you're going to see the ComEd rate as well as the potential savings that we're seeing will eventually end up evening out. So I think at this point, the consortium can continue to talk about that, but we're not quite sure how much longer we'll continue to see those savings for.
fair.
So, but it's interesting that the rate increase is pushing close to 30%. If you just on that one component, you know, 505 to 646 is massive.
Right.
And we'll be happy to get you more information on
And
that.
it's gonna happen, it's not just us, apparently, it's gonna happen to Commonwealth Edison customers too.
As you said during the debate on the water rates, don't talk percentages.
Yeah, well, it's a lot. This is real dollars. I mean, it's $1.40 times every kilowatt you use?
Right. Well, it's interesting. Go back to the bar chart for a moment, will you, Karina? I think that shows, I mean, if you take a look at it, outside of the red capacity charges that are in there, the others are fairly consistent over this period of time. So even the costs that MC squared puts on here, it just, you know, it's very insignificant in comparison to the bulk, which is your energy cost, and then this new capacity charge that really is being bumped up.
And why would we have any expectation that that's gonna come back down in 2016? If they can get away with quadrupling it now, why would you ever think they're gonna get that back?
Yeah, and I don't think you will, and I think that's what Karina's saying. Can you go to the last chart, Karina? I think at least what the consortium members have been talking about is you see in 2012 and into 2013, there was a tremendous difference between what ComEd was buying its energy for and what we were able to on the open market. That's when that deregulation really kicked in. As ComEd's old contracts rolled off and they were able to reprice these new contracts, that delta is starting to shrink, and I think there's some feeling that going forward between 15 and 16, there's going to be no difference in the experience in, I think it's the state of Ohio that deregulated a few years ahead of Illinois, that after about 4 or 5 years, everybody bounced back to the main provider simply because their price points were as competitive as anybody who could come into the market at that point. So I don't want to say there's a guarantee that we'll be all back to ComEd, because even at this, you look at with this rather significant jump in the capacity price, is still lower than what ComEd customers were paying back in 2012.
Does the consortium help us? Only because, the reason I ask is, the larger the pool of buyers, sometimes you get a better price and sometimes it represents more risk.
It does help us, but I think what helped us more, if you will, as a consortium, is the fact that we were able to lock in before the summer pricing. So if we lock in by April, the prices become ineffective as May, you're gonna see the greater savings in the summer, which is when all of the homeowners have their air conditioners on, which causes a huge increase in electricity. So we will see savings there.
My question wasn't seasonal, I'm sorry. My question was, have we looked into getting a price just Lake Forest? Or do we only look at the consortium? Sometimes when you look at a bigger pool, you get a better price. Sometimes you install a bigger risk and you have to pay a higher price with a bigger group.
This is a group price. However, what makes Lake Forest different, if you will, is that we have an electric, we have the green, 100% green renewable energy cert. So for us, ours is just a slightly bit higher because of the fact that we're promoting the green electricity. But to go back to your other question, have we asked MC squared for just a price for Lake Forest? We have not.
Would it be rude to the consortium to try that?
I think we can ask the,
I don't think it would be rude. We did ask the question the first year, because that came up in terms of,
Okay.
were we better off going off one? And it was interesting because, I'm trying to remember, I think that at that time, Lake Forest could have done as well as the consortium prices by itself, because we have few users using a lot of energy. Which makes it easy for them because they have so few customers, but they're selling a lot of energy. But by being part of the group, there were some other economies of scale in terms of, remember the first year we had to notify all the customers about what the transition was going to be and so forth. I think we're past some of those startup costs, so we could certainly go back to them, particularly as we look at the years going out and say, does this still make sense for us to be part of the larger consortium?
Just to ask. I don't think it's worth a lot of time. They're either going to say you're better off or you're not.
Right. Yep. Well, I agree. We can ask the question. We might even have that answer for you when we come back at the next meeting with Kurt Volkman.
Yeah, I just want to ask if it's a possibility.
It doesn't seem, though, that that's really the issue. I mean, I don't know, while we were chatting, I did a little research. It's coal. They've changed the environmental regulations, and they're talking about potentially a 20% reduction in overall capacity in the region as coal plants are shuttered. And then the ones that are upgraded, the costs of upgrading them are going to be passed along, and the combination is just is really significant. Makes a significant difference. And this PJM is the regional, I guess, 13-state distributor for the power. So they're the ones that auction off the capacity, and it gets auctioned, and they just pass along what people bid to supply the electricity, or I guess it's to purchase the electricity. So it's not really something that's tied to the relationship with MC squared.
No, but in a year it will, because we'll be renegotiating.
Well, that's another whole issue as to whether it makes sense to keep going there. But it's been good for us the last couple of years.
Right.
Corinne, I have a question, and maybe you can't answer it, maybe you can't, maybe Susan can. Do we have any idea what the use for the electric car charging station has been since it's been installed? Or Matt?
Well,
Matt,
Matt,
come up and answer.
Matt?
how about you come on up?
Yeah, since installing the electric vehicle station, we've had 7 charges since then. About once a week, and then we had 4 this past week. So that's where we're at with that. So yeah, we've had $7 returned back to us.
And Matt, during that period of time, did Michael Thomas's snow crews bury that under bunch of snow, or did he keep that open?
No, he went by it and he kept the spots open.
Buried everything else, but
Yeah.
not that.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, do we have any other questions or discussion on this with Karina?
Okay.
Okay, there being none, we're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, which would be a report on another election, which is coming up, on early voting for the spring election. And Margaret, not used to that, if you want to comment on it.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'd like to go over a few important dates in regards to the general election on March 18th. Although this is a brief summary of the dates, there's much more detailed information on the website that's listed at lakevoterpower.info. There's also information that will be in the dialogue that residents can expect to receive on Friday. So, as you can see from the slide, the last day to accept registrations for address changes, registrations for new voters or address changes was today. So voter registration is now closed and will reopen on March 20th. However, during the voter registration, there's a grace registration that allows limited registration at the clerk's office, which means any persons who wish to register to vote under grace provisions must vote at the time of their registration. This can easily be done in 2 locations. The first location is Lake County Clerk's Office in Waukegan, and the second one is Lake County Permitting Office in Libertyville. That begins March 3rd and ends March 15th. Next item on the slide is voting by mail. A lot of voters here use this. Voting by mail has already begun. It began on February 6th and will continue until March 13th. This option is open to any registered voter. There's a few ways that you can request a ballot. Their website, on a side note, their website is so informational and user-friendly that anybody who has any questions in regards to related to voting, check out that lakevoterpower.info. But back to the way you can get your ballot by mail. There's 3 ways. First is using the website, and you can send an e-request and have a ballot sent to your home. The second is you can print out, sign, and mail back a paper request asking for a ballot to be mailed to your house. Or third, you can just call the county clerk's office at this phone number listed, and the gals there will walk you right through the process. What the nice option that Lake County Clerk does is she allows you to track your ballot. So once you've become a voter by mail, you can actually track your ballot, and what that does is it keeps track of when the county sent the ballot to you and when the county received the ballot back, which is kind of nice. The last day to request a ballot by mail will be March 13th, and all voted ballots need to be returned with a postmark no later than March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day. Last is early voting. Early voting starts March 3rd and goes through March 15th. This option also is open to any registered voters. It's a state law that voters must present a government-issued photo ID when they come to early vote. City Hall serves as an early voting site for most residents. However, voters in Moraine and West Deerfield Township have already received notice from Lake County Clerk that their early voting site has changed, and that now is going to be handled out of the Highland Park Police Station Community Room in Highland Park. Lastly, I would encourage everybody to exercise their right to vote on Tuesday, March 18th in the general election. Polls open at 6 a.m., they close at 7 p.m. Again, this information is available on our back table. This website, which once again is lakevoterpower.info, is just loaded with information in regards to voting. And that is all I have.
Okay, and any questions on the vote, or which aldermen are going to be voted for at this point or taken from office? There is none. Are there any matters from our council meeting at this point that we could discuss now, just to get discussion going?
Well, the two I would suggest, number one, you have an ordinance. I know you've talked an awful lot about it with the water rates, and Elizabeth is here. Or if you'd like an update on snow removal, snow and ice, and weather forecast for the rest of the week, Mike Thomas is here. So whatever the pleasure of the committee is, we're happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Why don't we try first on the water rate ordinance to see if there's any other discussion, which I don't know if there can be much more discussion. Are there any questions from council in regard to that item that's going to appear on agenda?
Looks at me.
I'm looking at you, David.
The other ones aren't here. No, I've got another.
But if there is no discussion, yeah, I guess if Mike has a good half hour to talk, let's get him up here.
Don't give him the
Oh,
whole
don't
half
tell
hour.
him that.
Okay, well,
Is
try
Peter
to
Wright here?
limit it at 25 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Committee of the Whole. Last evening, we received about 4.5 inches of snow. We're in the process of cleaning up after that storm. Today, we focused on uncovering and exposing the catch basins, anticipating the rain that we're going to receive Wednesday night and Thursday. They're calling for upwards of 1.5 inches of rain. With the melt, with 4 feet of frost in the ground, we're going to have some potential flooding issues. So we've got about half the town done today. We're going to run 6 to 6 tomorrow and get the rest of the town done, where we've got maps showing us where all the catch basins are, and we're opening all those up. So along with that, we're continuing to plow sidewalks. We started today. We probably will finish tomorrow. Later on in the week, we'll haul from uptown in the parking lots, but we wanted, just with the flooding and the potential rain, to really address the catch basins first and foremost. With that, we would obviously encourage all residents to take a look at their sump pumps and their battery backups. It is something that I think they're going to be running a lot. They already have, but that's something that every resident should take a look at and be concerned with. The last Public Works Committee meeting met last week. We discussed, one of the issues was sidewalk plowing. In general, the overall quality of it. And tomorrow morning, myself, Dan Martin, and Susan are going to be putting together a survey that we will put out on the web, the city's webpage, and we'll put it out via different news media outlets, asking people's opinion on sidewalk plowing in general. And is it something that we should continue doing? Should we focus on doing a better job quality-wise around the school and business district? Or should we continue what we're doing? We realize the frustration after we get done plowing and people are done shoveling their driveways. We may show up a day or 2 or 3 afterwards. But again, it's simply the priority of how we approach a snowstorm. And The guys that are fixing the main breaks and picking up the garbage are the same guys that are plowing the streets, that are the same guys that are plowing the sidewalks. So we work things down in priority. But there were some issues raised and some concerns raised about overall quality, so we thought the best way to do that was to put out a survey and ask for residents' input. So that will hopefully be out sometime this week. The only other item is the salt that City Council authorized purchase of. We will be receiving a total of 20 semis from Texas. I believe to date we've received 14 of them. They're trickling in, but it is working. They're running 24/7 down in Grand Saline, Texas, 7 days a week. Truckers are telling us they're waiting 15 or 18 hours in line, and then they make their way up to us. So I believe we are going to have, with this delivery, enough salt to cover us for the rest of the year, or the rest of this winter and into next month. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'd just like to, commend you for the 500-ton find. I mean, even today on the news, Newark was talking about finding only 500 tons in New Jersey. And nobody has it.
Correct.
So, good job again, really.
Thank you. It's, what we heard today, salt was upwards of 250 a ton.
Yeah, that's what I heard that on the
So our
news.
price was, I believe, 185. And it's simply the logistics. There is plenty of salt out there, but it's sitting down in Louisiana, Texas, Utah, and logistically getting that to the various places is difficult. I read an article today where there's a barge sitting up in Maine. It's got to head down to New Jersey, but there's some issues as far as moving that barge, and it's got to be a U.S. claimed barge or something of that nature. New Jersey is in a world of hurt looking for any salt they could find. So
I was going to say, Michael, I ran into a mayor at a mayor's caucus meeting last week, and he told me that they had just purchased some for $245, and they were buying some more for $265. So our number felt pretty good.
yeah.
I
Original
actually,
cost was 50-something?
Yeah.
The last year and current snow season, the price did not change, $52.33 a ton. So this last 500 was 185. So
I asked this question though after the last meeting, and I'm not sure, I didn't really pursue it because I've been traveling, but salt's a pretty basic commodity. I would think there's some way to hedge that. I mean, I know the requirement goes up and down year over year depending on the weather, but I would think there might be some sort of a derivative we could purchase that would, I mean, you've done a great job of getting ahead of it so that didn't really create a problem, but if all of a sudden we had to buy a large quantity at $260 a ton, you know, it just,
I think Mike thinks that's the answer. Reinforce the tubs and buy everything we need. We can only store what percentage right now, what we use? We don't need to
well,
hedge it, we can buy it.
well,
So
but if we can't, but we don't, I mean, right now, we don't have the capacity to store that much, do we?
if we reinforce the bins,
correct. One of the things, old municipal services, we could store 600 tons of salt. New municipal services, we can store 1,600. So we can store an extra 1,000, but again, remember, we use approximately 3,400 tons a year. One of the things that we're looking at is reinforcing the two salt bays. We can only bring them up a certain level, and is there a way to reinforce them structurally to load them higher? Conveyor, whatever we need to do to get more salt in. Simply to avoid that same problem that we did and everybody else did when we all run out at the same time, and we're all calling for it, and there's only a limited number of semis to bring the material to the municipalities, the townships, the park district, the county, the state. Everybody's pulling from the same pile, so.
I kind of like the new paradigm of limited salting, though, to be honest with you. You salt the intersections, and the plow crews have done a great job of getting right down to the pavement. It's more environmentally friendly to put down less salt, and it might be a practice we want to consider
there were
utilizing.
14 accidents on 41 today between Deer Path and 120.
The snow didn't create that.
Oh, the black ice did. I mean, it was, I agree with you, but it looked perfect out today. I've never seen so many accidents on my way to work. every 500 yards, there was another car in the ditch with another police car. And it looked like perfect conditions.
Well, I've seen a lot of crazy driving out there too. People think they're invincible.
And again, to clarify, 41's taken care of by the state, not. the
41.
I'm sorry, I was just saying,
Yeah.
Waukegan and
without
60, all three of
the
them.
black ice that he was worried about for the city before, it must have been there. I didn't feel it, but it was accident after accident after accident. And I'm wondering if that was a lack of salt, although I agree with you. It'd be better to have less, unless that's the result.
Right.
At these prices, maybe we should just sell what we've got, pocket the money, and
stop
tell our
working.
drivers to be real careful.
It's an option. We'd have a lot of buyers.
On a related subject, the roads are about as bad as I've ever seen them. You drive Western Avenue from town down to Wesley, there's like joints, newly formed joints, buckling every 30 feet, it seems like. And
If you remember, I believe it was back in November, we ordered a new machine to help us with that, to heat material up. Typically, in the wintertime, we use a material called cold patch. The unique characteristic of this piece of equipment is we can use old asphalt that we've pulled out from the summer and the fall. So we have a bunch of that stored in the back, and it basically you reheat the material and can spread it. That machine, I believe, is going to be coming to us next week, and we will jump on the potholes. We've actually been working on potholes for the past 2 to 3 weeks. We did a lot on McKinley, I know. McKinley is horrible, and Wincia is horrible. And
they're everywhere.
they're everywhere, right. But we do ask residents, please, and it's not only on the website, but also to please contact us at Public Works. We started a spreadsheet, and we'll go out and take a look at them. We'll size them up, and we prioritize them every day.
Mike, what happens to the pavement that just forms a joint and pushes up? Does that settle back down with the thaw?
It should, yes, it should. But it's simply the same thing every year. Water gets under the pavement. We've had obviously some very significant hard freezes, but yes, those should come down. Wesley is the same way. Wesley, every 30 feet, you're hitting these bumps. So it should go down.
What about the driveway plowing across the road, narrowing the road? Is that a bigger problem this year or a smaller problem this year?
Smaller. That has not been as much of a concern as we've correctly so had in the past. The other thing we've been doing more aggressively this year is bench plowing, as I know I've mentioned in a couple meetings, but to try and push that snow back and widen the streets out. So it hasn't been as much of a concern.
I used to see driving around a dozen people snow blowing and shoveling into the street for the plow to take away, and I don't see that anymore.
Right, and that's fine if that happens before the plow comes down the street, but after the plow comes down the street, it's frustrating because we're making our swipe and we're out of there. We ask if they could keep it in their property, keep it in their right of way, would be a lot easier.
Have we been moving snow, like with the front end loader going, and where there are really big piles of it, scooping it up and taking it someplace else?
We've been doing two things. One, to answer that question, yes. So all the snow up in the central business district, all the parking lots, all that snow is up at Old Municipal Services. Largest piles I've ever seen.
Should we open a ski area?
Boy, you could. The snow out west in the Fourth Ward and on the southern side of town is going out to West Campus. So we work with 67 and 115. I would say at least a third of their parking lot is now 15-plus foot snowbanks. So that's number one. Number two, to improve the sight lines on the intersections, we began pushing snow back, and we completed that as well. Last week, we finished all the cul-de-sacs, 74 cul-de-sacs, so we hauled out of there as well. So now it's the catch basins. We'll probably drop the plows again tomorrow to try and open things up even more. And here comes the rain.
And any other questions for Mike, or? And we'll
I have a totally unrelated question, or a couple of them.
go for it.
One, now that the state has passed an ordinance or a law that there's no such thing allowed in the state of Illinois as using your cell phone while you're driving, There's no question anymore about whether you can or can't do it in any town you're in the entire state. You can't do it. Do we really need all these signs all over the place?
No, actually, we had plans of, I think, taking them down January 1st. Unfortunately, the people who take them down are also the ones plowing. So as soon as we have a break here, I think we've taken some down, but I think the plan is to try and get them down as quickly as we can.
Yes.
Michael, any sense of what the long-term forecast for the next month or so is? Was that it last night for big snows, or do we know? And we won't hold you to it.
What we have seen is that it's going, at least what we've seen through our 2 forecast services we work with, is that it should break in a couple weeks. But it is going to get warm the next 2 or 3 days. Early next week, it's going to get very cold again, single digits. So we're going to deal with the ice, all the snow and water, everything that's melt will turn into ice again. So, but what we have seen is that about 2 weeks out, things should begin to stay above that 32-degree temperature. So
Is that warming and freezing actually going to cause more problems than just having the snow? I know when you move snow, it does turn into ice, but seems the snow we've been getting has been pretty powdery, but once it melts and then once you get moisture on it and it freezes, you've got an ice rink, and I would think that's a lot harder to deal with.
it is, and it's exactly what we're dealing with in the curbs right now. We're about 1.5 to 2 feet off the curbs, and that's all snowpack, which has turned into ice. And that is the challenge, is trying to pop all of that. So, yes, you are correct.
To touch on that cell phone subject for a second, when we legislated that, there was some resistance to pros and cons. Not everybody drives a car that's equipped with Bluetooth to do the hands-free driving. My wife has a late model of 2012 car, a luxury car, and her Bluetooth is the worst in the world. It sounds like she's driving with her air conditioning on high and all 4 windows open. So she went out and bought a Plantronics piece for her ear. And I swear it sounds like she's sitting at her desk in her office now. So while not everybody has Bluetooth in their car, if their car's a few years old, everybody's cell phone has the Bluetooth. And it's at $59.95. I don't know where she bought it. It's a Plantronics. I'm telling you, it's clear as a bell. And since now it's a state law, everybody ought to get hep to the hands-free. There's no excuse for
They
it.
have
But
earbuds too.
you have to answer your phone. You have to pull it out of your pocket, do the code
I
thing,
think you
which
can
is like
press your earpiece and answer it.
If you can, then that's
I think you
okay.
can.
Okay.
Could we come up with anything else to talk about?
Well, I have a poem I'm prepared to read to kill a little time.
Oh boy, let's talk about the golf course instead.
It'll only take a minute.
Have at it. This
All
is,
right, but
The G-rated.
it's entitled Snow, and with apologies to Joyce Kilmer, the author of Trees. I think that I shall never know why we are getting so much snow. Snow that falls both day and night and deigns to give us brief respite. Snow that closes schools and roads, making roofs collapse from fatal loads. Snow that's shoveled, plowed, and piled till all of us are really riled. Snow that causes power lines to fold and leaves us in the dark and cold. But though I hate this hand now dealt, I know that soon it all must melt.
Now we know what you're going to do with your spare time after May.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we could ask, I'll put him on the spot, Alderman Edelman, to give us an update as to the task force, the Lake Bluff, Lake Forest Park District Task Force?
Sure, be happy to. We've met about once a month. The objective has been to try and find synergies between the 2 park and rec boards in our 2 communities, Lake Bluff and Lake Forest. It's a very difficult task, to be honest with you. We have been unable to find any really low-hanging fruit. We came up with all sorts of ideas to enhance the quality of the rec programs for both communities, but it actually involves spending more money and not finding economic synergies. We broke into 4 subcommittees. I'm on the golf course subcommittee, surprise, surprise. And one idea we kicked around, but it just doesn't really seem viable, is to have like a super golf season pass that gives you privileges at both golf courses. But the logistics of working something like that out are pretty difficult for reasons I won't elaborate on now. One thing that sounds like it might be viable is to have a punch card, whether it's for 20 rounds or 30 rounds. The punch card's good at either golf course, and for discounted rounds. The problem, again, is the logistics, because somehow or another you have to track, did the user use the punch card at Deer Path, or did they use it at Lake Bluff? So we have a timeline. We're meeting again in March and April, and I think we're wrapping it up about May. But I want to be totally candid, is that I don't know that we're going to come up with a lot of material ideas that are going to be beneficial for the two communities. It's not so easy.
And we may be out of things to discuss at this point, unless Bob, if you want to.
Is another phone?
No.
And I can elaborate on one other item, and that is the golf course. I stopped by the golf course today and visited with Rick Walrath, who's the Kemper PGA Pro running the revenue side for us. And looking out over the golf course, it's hard to imagine that we're going to be golfing 45 days from now, but that's really the timeline. A couple of years back, we were golfing in March. That's unlikely. There's so much snow that's got to melt out there. One concern is, because the frost in the ground, if there's rapid melting of the snow out there, because of the frost, that the moisture won't go into the golf course, it'll run off. And then if there's a hard refreeze, that's really not good for the greens or the fairways. We're a little bit down year to date in memberships sold as of right now. You've got to believe that the weather we've had is really, people have put golf out of their minds for the time being. So hopefully that'll pick up once we see the light of spring around the corner. But again, I would encourage people to consider buying their season passes, which they can do online at deerpathgolfcourse.com.
Thank you. Any other comments by council? Any members of the public that would like to address council for about 10 minutes or so? There being none?
I'm going to do one more just because we have time. I had to go to the hospital for a minor surgery a week ago, and I got to tell you, what a great place to go. Got there, I was met by nice people. People were coming in and talking to me. There was no waiting. There was always being attended to. I just felt, you go to the doctor's office a lot and things like that. This was just, you felt like you were special. And I just wanted to say, I just wanted to mention that because it's usually not a good experience. So I was just really, really impressed with the hospital, and everything was great.
People always feel that way after a frontal lobotomy.
Or a bottle in front of me.
No, this is cosmetic, can you tell?
Maybe you better cut this topic short. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and meeting is adjourned.
We'll begin council right on time, 7:30, or maybe a minute or two before.
All right.
Aye.